Hello there. This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is sponsored by Dropbox Business. Dropbox Business with administrative and security controls designed specifically for businesses. Dropbox Business enables teams to simply work together on any file from anywhere. Learn more at dropbox.com/business. And hey, let's start the show. For Thursday, November 12th, 2015, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. I think we can call that a near successful, pretty good
The opening?
launch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Patrick.
I could tell you were pretty happy with the timing on that music.
Oh yeah.
You did well.
Since I've started hosting the podcast, every initiation of the episode. First of all, Jeremy Williams, Patrick Norton joining us today.
Hey, everybody.
And I'm Norm. Thanks for joining us. But Patrick, every time we start the podcast now, it's like our version of a rocket launch. Everything, the order of operations, the timing, the digital streams, everything has to be perfect. And I don't think we've got perfect yet, but the rocket hasn't blown up yet. Yeah.
So you're going by Soviet standards rather than American standards for
That's
rocket
right.
launches?
Well,
Close enough.
yeah, close enough. Thank everyone for joining us. And speaking of rockets, let's just start off talking about this past weekend's events.
Yeah.
Did you guys see it?
I did not see it. There was a Trident II launch, right?
Which is a missile.
A $32 million missile.
Was it an intentional loss or an accident? Excuse me, an intentional launch or an accidental
Broken
launch?
arrow. It was an intentional launch. So Patrick, do you know about this? Have you been following?
I found out about it from you. Well, I found out about it from you, but I first heard about the light in the sky from a
Yes.
friend of mine who was trolling her sister and with my help by giving her really, really cool quotes from Revelations, because she thought that there was an alien that had come to the planet and it had been confirmed, according to sources on Facebook, by no less than 3 government agencies.
Confirmed.
The
on forces.
speed of stupid on Facebook may actually exceed the speed of stupid on the internet itself.
Whoa.
Not that I'm a little cranky.
Well, now you should see the images. If you haven't seen this yet, it's worth checking out because it is a very unique site.
Yes.
Unique site.
Yeah.
Things are just
you
unique.
saw it. You didn't know what it was.
That's true. So Dan and I were driving to the East Bay. We were going to the USS Hornet for a birthday party, which if you've never had a birthday at the USS Hornet or attended someone's birthday, I highly recommend it.
Or just go to the Hornet,
awesome.
period.
Or just go to the Hornet. It's in Alameda. It's a great museum. But driving over the bridge, as we approached the bridge, we saw a light moving across the sky, and it was low enough. It looked low enough because it was moving fast across the sky.
It's like a flashlight in the sky.
When you see lights in the sky, like an airplane, for example,
Right.
based on the how fast it's moving and the how bright it is, that's how your brain reconciles. Oh, it must be at this altitude, which
Right.
I know to be an airplane because it's only that bright. It's not a star, and it's moving this fast, and it has colors. This looked like a white spotlight, and it was moving fast enough that it looked like my brain was convinced it was a helicopter.
Wow.
Because that's how fast it was. You can actually follow it over a course of 15 seconds moving across
I
the
was
sky.
amazed that people all down the California coast saw it.
And so that's the thing. After about 30 seconds of it, it went behind a building in my field of view and disappeared. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What was that? And it didn't look like a helicopter because, like, what was it shining a spotlight on? It was
Right.
looking really bright, and I didn't see illumination anywhere. So went on Twitter and asked, what was that light in the sky? And apparently people were talking about it, not just in the Bay Area, like you said, Jeremy, all up and down the coast.
That's
The launch was actually in San Diego.
Crazy,
Actually,
huh?
in San Diego.
We're way north of San
We're
Diego.
way north.
Like that's
Yeah.
how high does a Trident missile actually fly?
Yeah.
It must have, I mean, I don't know the exact altitude, but high enough in the atmosphere so that people as far north as San Francisco and San Rafael saw it, and people as far east as Nevada, New Mexico saw it, based on social media reports.
So is it actually a ballistic launch when they set one of those off?
It was I don't know, it's some test. I don't exactly not know exactly.
Oh, no, I mean, like, is it one of those big, giant, arcing, ballistic kind of?
I don't
I guess
know.
it does qualify as an
Yeah.
intercontinental. It is. It's a ballistic missile. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no warning. We actually, Will, Adam, and I talk about this in a future episode of Still Entitled, which we recorded earlier this week, so you guys can look forward to more discussion about that. But I think the fascinating thing, the takeaway, was how people reacted in the age of social media, in the age of interconnectedness, and how fast information travels.
Terror versus curiosity versus some more definable reality.
And
Could be a
also,
government cover-up.
I mean, who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory? You don't have to believe it, but you can always appreciate the theory and the way people work their logic and bend their logic to fit the theory.
Work additional components into it.
Mhm.
Well, of course they said it was a Trident missile launch, but have you ever heard of a $32 million missile being launched randomly on a Saturday afternoon?
Saturday night,
I
yeah.
don't think so.
Mm-hmm. And
They've
I've never
got
heard
the
it.
aliens
Also,
back in '51.
we're in an age where we don't have the missile fear. You know, it's
You can speak for yourself. Thank you.
No,
I'm old enough. I did hiding under the desk drills in case of nuclear strikes in one of my elementary schools. Which, at the age of
Are
40,
you 70?
well, no, I was in the Midwest.
Cold War.
I was in Iowa, man. We did tornado drills and we actually did some hide under your desk drills. Which I think we're probably a little dated at that point, but. Yeah, I think the school administration wanted us to be prepared
Right
for
on, man.
all eventualities.
It's a Boy Scout marching song. So there is, in addition to that, very eventful Saturday evening. There were a bunch of things that happened over the weekend and some news. So let's jump right into the thing that none of us were at least I don't believe any of us were at, were BlizzCon. BlizzCon over the weekend. Activision Blizzard's big annual game convention. It happened just after, as we talked about last week, the Activision buying King, the makers of Candy Crush, and we really showed our ignorance of these freemium games last week. Proudly, yes. Like, what? I've never played one of these. It's like a match 3 game.
Man. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, Crossy Road. Oh, we'll talk about that on Apple TV in a while, a little bit. But I think the coolest thing was the Warcraft trailer came out. You guys watch that?
No. That's
Any interest?
I played Warcraft. I was addicted to the game for a good year. I'll see the movie, sure, but I guess I'm not anxious to see the trailer.
But you are interested in seeing the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw some of the photos you took of the props at Comic-Con, and looks amazing.
It really looks a lot like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I guess.
A little bit like, I mean, and Weta did work on it, so the armor is, has that Weta look to it.
Similarity.
But there is a great, the kind of caricatured armor styling that you'd see in a video game. The orcs look great. They're massive. It's weird because it's a telling of Warcraft, the original story. How old is Warcraft? Early 90s?
Yeah.
93, 94?
Sounds right.
And that story, I don't know, like people today playing World of Warcraft or other modern games don't know that original, that classic orc versus humans game.
I didn't know
story.
that there was much of a narrative to those early RTS games.
Oh yeah, totally.
All right.
Totally, the orcs interdimensional travel, invading Azeroth. I mean, didn't you get the story from World of Warcraft? When you were playing it? No,
no, dude. Did you ever
play
play
for
it?
the story?
No, I already knew by the time World of Warcraft came out that there were certain types of games I could go nowhere near.
Yeah.
Like there was kind of a very early Sims experience that nearly took me and one of my closest friends in college out of college in a single semester, and then later with Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
And there's certain types of things where even I can recognize that it's so obviously designed to be crack that keeps you on the computer 24 hours. I just won't go near it. Because I think like an 18-hour gaming session is a perfectly rational thing for a human being to do, but my wife seems to think that should be grounds for divorce and never getting to see my children again. So there's a compromise in place.
Yeah, I stayed away from ever crack as long as I could, but as soon as World of Warcraft came out, I got hooked. I don't know why. It was the accessible MMO.
Right.
When it came out, it was like, okay, this is the game that people who don't necessarily care so much about the role-playing aspects or old fantasy, they can still get into it. The graphics are great. It's accessible.
And the cooperative infrastructure they built in.
Yeah.
The social stuff in terms of the trading and the guild stuff. Entire social networks and communities were built out of that.
I'm surprised it's taken so long to get a movie off the ground.
Well, Gary at one point was, I think he said he wrote a draft of a movie.
Yeah.
Sam Raimi at one point was going to direct it, and now it's Duncan Jones who directed Moon and Source Code. And
He's directing it?
yeah,
No kidding.
that's
Wow.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Did anyone other than me lose people to Fallout this week?
I spent an hour in it, mostly in the character creation tool, and then once I left the in Fallout, and there are a lot of big games out actually these past 2 weeks. There's Fallout 4, there's the new Tomb Raider game, which has been reviewed really well. The Call of Duty, COD Ops 3, I think came out last week also. I've only tried Fallout, and it's one of those it's going to be an 80 to 100 hour game,
Right.
And so once you get out of the vault, which that's not a big spoiler, you leave a vault, then I feel it on the anxiety sinking in.
Fallout 4, as I assume Fallout 3 was, because I don't play those games because they're just too big. They are value games. I mean, you get a lot for your money with those games. You can play through them and spend how long? Like 50 hours
At
probably
least.
going through, and then you can play it again and play it completely differently. It's the exact opposite of the game I'm looking for these days. I want a 4 to 8 hour game, and I'm happy if it's 4.
Yep.
And I just want it all compacted into that. I want crack cocaine in game
Well,
form.
Jeremy, I think your tune's gonna switch once those games get adapted for VR.
It's possible, especially if it were multiplayer. If it was like a metaverse where I could wander around with people.
That is one of the interesting things about games like Fallout, these open world games, where it's a single player experience, and people have tons of fun exploring on their own in the world, just by themselves without any real social aspect to it.
A friend of ours who has a workstation in the warehouse had brought in their console and connected it to a monitor and given themselves like 2 personal days. And I literally watched them every time I wandered in and out of my little nest in the corner of the warehouse with some computer or something. It's like I finally was like tapped on the shoulder, like, "What are you doing?" Crafting. There's basically crafting in Fallout 4. I'm like, "You've been doing that for like 6 hours." She's like, "Yeah, it's pretty awesome." And then I come back like 20 minutes later, and there's basically carrying a BFG, I know not the name of, that looked like a minigun that was shooting like 40 millimeter grenades. I was like, "You're not crafting anymore, are you?" And this big shit-eating grin, like, no, I'm not. And this is good too.
It's why Minecraft is so popular. The open-endedness of it. They're building tool sets, and Fallout is a game where you have. It's a type of game where you have both that type of tool set built in to explore and make it your own story, but also a story, and also a world that they've crafted so that you can interact with. And that's I don't think, is there an MMO that does it that well? I didn't play the Elder Scrolls MMO
I didn't either.
and the Bethesda MMO.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I ran through Fallout for a few hours last night just to see what it was about. And actually, I guess I tried to get hooked because I would like to enjoy that kind of game. I just don't have the patience for it. But it has that Skyrim kind of environment, which is just stellar.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that in VR, just to wander through it.
And I
I
know.
just want to know why the dogs look better than the people.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is
the people are way in the uncanny. I don't even know if they're in the uncanny valley or about to fall into the uncanny
It's like
valley.
10-year-old uncanny valley levels with the people, which is a little disappointing. But the environment's perfect.
There is a mod. I think you can use Vorpex to modify games like Fallout and get
my experience with that
VR.
has not been great.
Yeah, it gets the head tracking, like the head rotation right, but the movement you still have to be okay.
It emulates the mouse. It moves the mouse when you move your head, and it's rarely 1-to-1 in my experience.
There's a little bit of drift or a little bit of weird arcing. Another event happening that happened this past weekend, Day of the Devs. Jeremy and I both went. Patrick, do you know about this event?
I do not.
So Jeremy, why don't you tell us about Day of the Devs?
Oh, sure. It's the third year they've done it. It was invented by Double Fine, which is Tim Schafer's company. They're a local independent game developer, and they invite, I think there were 40 game developers who were invited to, it's always in a different location. This time it was in the Dog Patch, and they all set up booths, and there's a stage. People play music. They take turns presenting on the big screen, and it's basically a party for independent game developers and a chance for them to show their games in development to anyone who wants to come. It's totally free.
All ages?
Yeah, all ages, and people come and they give feedback to the developers so that they can, finish off their games and make them better.
It really feels less like an E3 type where they're just to play the game and more of a festival.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people there, maybe they played 1 or 2 games, but they're just hanging out, chatting with people, meeting like-minded people, chatting about games. There's a stage, like you said. There's music.
These are indie games too. I mean, these are like
Yeah.
2-3 person developer or 2-3 developer games. I mean, they have very limited budget. This kind of exposure to them is priceless.
There was a range. Some
That's
more
true.
established developers, some people, and there's some fairly high profile, at least in the indie community.
Cuphead was there.
Yep. You have Tacoma, which is the game from Fulbright, I want to say. They did Gone Home. Some VR games as well. What did you play? You brought your son? What did you guys
My
play?
son actually did a report on it. He's an 8-year-old, so he had to do a current event the following week, so it was perfect for him. So he brought a photo of him and Tim Schafer. He interviewed like 4 people there. He liked Arena Gods, which is there's a lot of games like this now, but it's a top-down 4-player last man standing game with I don't know, it's like a sword fighting game. There was an amazing LED game that I loved. It wasn't the kind of thing you could ever buy because it's a piece of hardware, but it had a big LED strip that ran from the floor to the ceiling, and they made a game out of it where you were a character and you had a joystick and you pushed up and it would move up, but then like these pitfall style patches of lava would open up and you couldn't stand on them when they turned the darkest color. And then you had to destroy these red guys by shaking the joystick, and the idea was to get from point A to point B.
And it was all mapped with LEDs on a matrix.
In one strip. So it's like,
Cool.
what kind of game can you do with a single strip of
How
LED?
wide?
It's
Just one?
One line. Yeah,
Really?
one line. It was a really interesting experiment with good obstacles and enemies.
And it's all in your head then.
Well,
The
sure.
representation, the colors are the only
That's
way
the-
you really differentiate.
That's
it.
exactly it, yeah.
Colors and luminosity.
It was well coded. I liked it.
Wow. Spy Party was there, which I thought was a
I didn't
fun
play that.
game. It's been in development for a while. A 2-player game where one person plays as a spy, another person plays as a sniper, and the sniper tries to identify the spy and shoot them, and the spy tries to complete a series of objectives. It's one of those. There was a Half-Life mod called The Ship that was released a long time ago. That this really cool multiplayer idea where it would populate the world with artificial intelligence, with NPC characters. And the idea is that as you play with your friends, you're trying to hide from your friends by moving like the NPC
Pretending to
characters,
be
Pretending
NPCs.
to be NPC. And because the NPC, the AI, wasn't perfect in terms of their pathfinding and in terms of like how they were programmed, their interactions. They were programmed to interact with each other. Then you also you could hide from your friends by not moving too fast or not moving your mouse around too quickly. And so this takes that idea where you're supposed to, the person who plays the spy blends in with the other characters while trying to complete things like pickpocketing, overhearing things, and interacting with the NPCs, while a sniper observes the room from afar and tries to pick you out.
What's that called again?
Spy Party.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think really cool. And it's out on not early access on Steam yet, but you can buy a pass and they'll send you a code. And I think it even works cross-platform with Wine for Mac.
Double Fine was showing Day of the Tentacle, which too.
Remastered.
Yeah.
How did you think that looked?
I mean, it looks great. I never played the original. I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I feel bad because I do really like what Double Fine's done for the community, and that was back to their Kickstarter. And I love their company, but I never liked LucasArts games.
You never
day.
liked the adventure games.
No, I don't know. I was a Sierra guy, and I liked typing. I liked saying "get lamp" and walk over there. I liked entering my commands. I didn't like the point and click. I thought that cheapened the experience.
Cheapened the experience.
But the dialogue system
No
was
one
so good.
under 40 shares my opinion. I understand that.
Well, A, I am over 40, and B, I also just don't miss typing in things and having a GRU eat my face. But
There was a connection. It was like the game communicated with you in text, and you wrote in text. It was like a symbiosis. It's like you were on the same level.
I'm with you.
All right.
So my issue with that is that those remastered games never give me the exact. They're nostalgia plays.
Right.
If I'm paying for that game, it's not to have the exact same experience. I'm never going to feel as great as I did playing that game back then. But it is like in my mind, the archival now. This is now the canonical new how it is preserved in my brain.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever bought a remastered game and played it all the way through. It's more like playing it halfway through, or just get to see a level, see there. Oh, okay, they fixed it up. This is now how I'm going to think of this game now. But I don't know if I.
Well, maybe it's a chance for people who didn't play it to play it. Like Grim Fandango is one of the greatest adventure games of all time. And I guarantee you, people under my age probably never played it. So
And even the remastered game like Grim Fandango, while the
now
story
it's on iOS, you can play it anywhere.
the pacing is not in line with what the new kids expect. Even in an adventure genre.
Well, that's one of the challenges. I mean, it's funny watching people react to MAME cabinets, where they either really, really get into it, and if they're really, really young, a lot of times they get into it a lot faster, but there's this sort of middle space where it's not exactly what they expect from their phone or from a console game.
Yeah.
And they're either going to get sucked into the gameplay or not. And it's really, I mean, I think it's really curious to watch the reaction to that. I'd so much rather run the original program in emulation than watch somebody's redesigned version, but, I just... It's weird sometimes for me to see characters I know that have been made over.
Yeah.
Speaking of cheapening the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a fan of up-resing things. I like the original. If the original art was drawn for low res, that's how it was intended to look. That's what the artist saw.
Right.
That's what we should see.
You should whip out the CRT to play it on
You
those
should.
as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, speaking of old hardware, unearthed this week, and it was a big deal for people like our friend Steve Lin, who collects old consoles. The original SNES PlayStation prototype.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see this?
Yeah.
It was a big deal. They got it running to some extent.
So everyone knew that this existed. I mean, this was a deal that fell apart in the late stages between Sony and Nintendo.
After the SNES, before the PlayStation.
Yeah.
This is when Nintendo was thinking about making a CD-based entertainment system.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They were supposed to all be destroyed, but some wise people held on to it.
Right. So they booted it. They got a splash screen, and some of the hardware still works. So it's a really cool artifact. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like kind of like what you think a Japanese piece of electronic looks like in the 90s.
Right.
With the vents and and the SNES style game ports.
What game is that?
I don't
It's
know.
like Two Dogs or...
Yeah.
Oh.
So it does have a cartridge on the top. Interesting.
Yes.
I would like to know more about this hardware, and I think we'll ping Steve Lin and get some insight from him.
Right on.
What else is going on? Let me pull open the show notes. Oh, yeah. Are you ready for this, Jeremy? You taking a deep breath?
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready. Hit me.
We're going to talk about iPads. The iPad Pro is out.
Yeah, dude, you got one.
Well, it was announced. The rumor was that it was going to go on sale on the 11th, which is Wednesday, yesterday, and it did. And not only did it go available on pre-sale, it was also in store. So here it is. Bam! For people watching the video, tested iPad Pro.
Yeah.
Obviously, with only having had it for one day, and
Yep.
Patrick, let me hand it over to you.
What's
to
your
check
full
out.
review?
The full review is not ready.
All right.
But leading,
No. You have not finished your review. Your full review is not 2 words, not ready.
it might end up being not ready.
I'm sorry. I read like 3 different reviews, and it was one of those things where you're like, wow, like prior expectations are insane, because it was like I was reading about, reading like I want to say it was like maybe Mossberg, The Verge, and Daring Fireball. I felt like I was reading about 3 completely different products.
Did Daring Fireball like it?
So we'll talk about what the reviews are saying, and there's a reason to read the reviews, because it's interesting to know how these pundits and these fans perceive the product,
Right.
and what they're trying to get, the context they're trying to get across, in addition to some of their own testing. But leading up to the release of this product, Tim Cook went on a media tour, and they really made a big deal about how this, because it's ostensibly a $1,000 tablet,
Right.
it's pretty expensive, how this could be a device that replaces, for some people, their desktop or even their laptop. Now, they're not going out and saying this is the tablet that can replace your laptop, because that's Microsoft's slogan for the Surface. So without saying, hey, the iPad Pro is a tablet that's going to replace your desktop and laptop, they're just saying a lot of people won't need desktops, and this will be good enough for them. And I think that's true. It's already been true.
That's the thing.
It's already
right?
been true with the iPad and the iPad Mini. A lot of people, even with the iPad Mini, use that as
Right.
90% of their computing time is
Yeah.
on that device. And maybe they have a workstation at work, or maybe they have access to a computer with a monitor and a mouse and a cursor control. But for email, for web browsing, for photo work, iPads, or even their phones, the quote-unquote mobile devices have been fine. And so I think that also the context is a lot of people have been reviewing the iPad Pros and saying this is Apple's big play to save the iPad line, and they've been quoting all these sales.
Why does it need to be
sales shows.
saved?
I don't think it needs to be saved at all, and I don't think this is the product that they're doing to do that. Maybe
They only made $96 billion last
Right.
quarter. Apple's in trouble. They only
Yeah.
made 89% of the revenue of the entire tablet industry and most of the revenue off of development for mobile apps. They're dying compared to Android. No, it's where all the money is.
absolutely.
I don't think they have a lot of problems there.
No, and even if you look at trends at the growth rates, because
Right.
you can look at sales numbers and say, okay, they've sold X million, but if you look at the one level above that and look at trends and what the growth rate is, and what there's negative growth,
Right.
and sure, people buy tablets less often than they buy phones, and Apple has done a miraculous thing in terms of convincing a consumer, people, even those sitting in this room right now, that they need to, or they want to at least, buy a new phone every year or every other year. We've said this before. That's crazy for a lot of people. People should not be spending $800 off contract or even $400 on contract every other year to buy a phone. Now, if you consider the phone is you're not only just the phone for making calls, but also your computer, even then, buying a new computer every 2 years, pretty crazy for most people.
Right.
But it's how they've expanded, and it's how people actually think of cell phones. A lot of people think of their iPhones these days. That's their preference. For the iPad, it being an additional expense, they've found that people haven't been buying. The good enough in the second or third generation
Right.
has actually been good enough.
My kids are still using iPad 1s to watch videos and play
iPad
games.
Ones.
Yeah.
Totally. Wow. Patient kids.
Well,
Well,
they-
that's slowed by now. I mean, I was trying to use my kid's iPad 2, and I could not do it anymore.
It's in one because we don't have much that's newer. So because I always notice, like, I would always try to keep like a gaming PC. I'd build like a $500 gaming PC and limp it along for like 4 or 5 years, and I was cool as long as I didn't jump onto somebody else's state of the art $8,000 machine.
Yeah.
But it's for the most part, it's one of the areas where they have patience because they so desperately want to play that video game. They'll wait 30 seconds while it loads.
And it's one of those things where at this point, and we said this in the iPhone 6S review, that there may be some diminishing returns, and maybe have been for a long time on the iPad side. So how do you get rid of the diminishing returns? Where you look at how people maybe don't expect to use their iPad, right? It's
Right.
the old iPads, the Retina iPad Mini, love it. And it's really great for the consumption, great for watching video, great for reading email. So with the iPad Pro, I think they're exploring the new use cases. They're
Right.
trying to get rid of the diminishing returns. It's not, I don't think, to save the iPad or the tablet market, but to maybe change what that means in relation to how people use their computers. And so a lot of the reviews talk about performance. And I think the Daring Fireball and the Ars Technica review did that the most, and talking about this being possibly an inflection point for ARM-based computing,
Right.
which is really interesting. The iPad Pro is a piece of hardware using the latest is A9 now,
A9, yeah.
A9X chip from Apple. It's an ARM processor, not x86. It's very fast. In a lot of these benchmarks, single core benchmarks, it outperforms things like the Intel's Core M processor
Right.
in single core performance. The GPU here outperforms even like a lot of current generation
Right.
MacBooks performance. Now, that pure computational and processing power, sure, that's great and that's interesting, and you can use that to project forward and say maybe down the line it won't make sense to make a cursor-based tiled window OS using
Right.
ARM processor, and maybe Intel's in trouble. But to talk about this product specifically, that performance means so little when the apps and the platform available on iOS are not what people need for the laptop experience and for the tiled window and the cursor
Well,
experience.
I mean, one of the quotes that Daring Fireball pulled together a whole bunch of the reviews at one point, and Horace Dediu's review, where he basically says it seems to be the first iOS device meant to be used on a desk, and this I think the Pro is going to live or die based on how well the split screen multitasking works. Because I cannot do my job going from a single screen to a single screen to a single screen.
Absolutely.
And most content creators I know, no matter what they're doing, have enormous difficulties with that. And I think about it. I was thinking about it a lot because I spent most of the last year, my primary desktop was this sub $400 gaming machine I built with a dual core Pentium processor, which is phenomenally, fast enough. It's like Core i5 speed on single thread tasks. But as soon as you have 4 or 5 apps open, even switching between apps every so often, something hiccups or glitches or there's a pause. And all I can think of is like, if I'm sitting here trying to do something on deadline, and my iPad Pro is like, okay, be there in a second, I'm going to be thinking even about Core i3 laptops or anything else.
Well, that's when you say Core i3, you're saying ostensibly you're not just saying that performance point. You're
Right.
talking about an x86 OS or an OS platform
Right.
that's designed with multiple Windows essentially.
Yeah.
Not Windows with a capital W, Microsoft Windows, but
Right.
a tiled window interface. And Jeremy, I think we've talked about this before, where I think I postulate that the way humans our brains are wired, we're spatial people, and we visualize information and data really well when they're blocked off in Windows. And it's not just about that's a good use of the canvas and the screen space, and it's not about performance. It's
Right.
about that's how we relate information to each other, and in these boxes. Now maybe that paradigm will change, and maybe Apple will figure out a way where you can split the screen into multiple different ways, and you don't need to have a flat back desktop
Right.
to have overlay in Windows. But I completely relate with you, Patrick, where my brain cannot. It feels like it's at a crawl when it's
Right.
one window or one screen at a time.
It's like, oh, DOS.
And
with
it's not even
those-
just like the switching between the windows. It's that my brain, the information gets lost when I switch. Like I can't move the data in my mind when I'm going from copying a piece of text from one screen to
Right.
pasting it in a document, and then like I need to see all those things together next to each other.
Oddly, you can't, as far as I know, you can't do two Safari tabs side by side either.
Oh, funny.
How
Right.
about Chrome and Safari?
You have to, like, the apps have to support that side panel. So I'm not sure any other web browser supports it yet.
I believe let's do a quick
Yeah.
test
Or
right now.
you could try Firefox as of like yesterday. Firefox on iOS is
Is
out.
it actually Firefox, or is it a
Yeah.
Firefox interface set on top of Safari?
Well, all of the web browsers have to use the WebKit
Right.
core, but it is Firefox. It will sync with your bookmarks.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, Chrome splits halfway.
Oh, there you go. Problem
So
solved.
Safari, hey, open load. Yeah, so you're right. I think a lot of reviews talked about software not being there yet in
Yeah.
terms of just basic compatibility. It's the same issue that we're into with the 6S and 3D
don't know.
Touch being a big feature.
Right.
And we still don't have 3D Touch being used everywhere.
The thing is, the stylus is the big hardware improvement here.
Right.
You've got a bigger screen. Other than that, it's the same thing as the new iPad Air. You could do split screen with that. You could hook up a keyboard to it. You could do the same productivity apps. The new thing is the stylus, and you haven't had a chance to try that yet, Norm, because they're not even available for the first month, right?
Not even the keyboards and the stylus. The
Yeah.
thing that essentially makes this usable as a laptop replacement, the
Yeah.
built-in keyboard. They have the Logitech one, but not the native one.
Oh, I heard the Logitech one was better though.
You know what, Jeremy? I don't think you can do Safari, and the renderer won't do it. Every time I'm trying
I
to
thought
do
you
this,
just tried it.
No, I couldn't. I said that Safari and Chrome will both work with other apps side by
Oh.
side, but I'm trying to get rid of
You s-
Twitter right now, and it won't let me put. How did?
You swipe down from the top. So get it in the side and then swipe down from the
Oh my
top.
goodness! There it goes.
There you go. So
Oh no! Okay, there it
done.
goes.
It does work. But you have
Wow.
to use two different browsers.
You got to use two different browsers.
I will be very curious to see that stylus. If I could draw, I think that would be enough for me to justify buying an iPad Pro, because from all reports, the stylus is great. The latency is very good, and it's got interesting technology.
It's not a capacitive stylus. You actually cannot use it on previous iPads.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. So that would be very interesting to me, but I can't draw anything. It's not my life. If it was, that would be pretty cool.
I mean, having used the Surface Book, for example, with the stylus that comes with that, the Microsoft Pen, and the convenience of being able to pop up OneNote and draw something and doodle, even though I'm not an artist either, but it really is just about taking screenshots and annotating or just jotting something down, incredibly useful. And I think Apple's going to need to bulk up, or third-party app developers will bulk up the note-taking capabilities. The 12.9 size canvas, the 13-inch screen in this thin tablet form factor, and both the Surface Book clipboard and the MacBook Pro are almost exactly the same size. The Surface Book's a little bigger. Is great. I think the Mini is going to sell well for Apple going in the future. I think the Pro is going to sell well, and I think the standard iPad actually will not. I have no need for that. It's too small, 9.7 inch.
We also tested the speakers before we started recording, and I was very impressed. I'd be curious to see what you think. I mean, obviously,
I have issues.
Caveats involved. It's a tiny little enclosure, but have you heard it?
I have
It's
not.
got 4 speakers, and they have this new enclosure that reverberates the sound inside.
Right.
So it gives you we compared it to the laptop, and it was night and day.
Right.
Far superior.
Well, the laptop speakers, I mean, Apple's laptop speakers have just been atrocious for a long time.
Yeah.
And the screens on their entry-level laptops, the MacBook Air, I think been
The
terrible
screens,
with the screens.
the standard res ones,
Which I don't think they'll change that. One final thing I'll say about the iPad Pro and how I'm going to think about testing it and using it is I really like when Microsoft released the Surface Book, they said out clearly their bet on this product was that people would use it as a laptop 80% of the time and use it as a tablet 20% of the time.
Yeah.
And that theory informed how they distributed the battery between this device and how they got the weight to be what it is. Now, that could be all marketing speak, but like I said in my review, I found that to be really true. I need the laptop 80% of the time when I'm buying, if I'm buying a $1,500 device. And the 20% uses the tablet, where it's either for note-taking, sharing information, or sitting and reading and watching a video. That was good enough, the 2.5 hours of battery life. Obviously, the iPad is the almost flip of that. It's something where if you buy an iPad Pro, you are using the tablet form of it most of the time, maybe 80% of the time. And if you buy the accessory, like the keyboard, which no one talked about lappability, but only it's fixed at one angle and it doesn't lock, maybe use that 20-30% of the time. It doesn't add extra battery either. I'm curious to see whether that is a viable use case for something that costs $1,000 or $1,200 with the keyboard.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see. They gave in to so many things over the years. Video on the iPod.
I think saying giving in is not the right way.
Well, reverse their position.
Which
responded to reviewer.
Yes.
I don't think
requests.
I don't think that's it either. I think that it's purely marketing. I think just like where Steve Jobs said the stylus is a bad device and you want to use finger, it's purely sales speak. And
fine. So they reversed their position on their marketing.
They unfolded their roadmap.
I wonder if eventually, because right now Tim Cook is saying that Microsoft's product is diluted because it doesn't know if it's a portable or if it's a workstation. Mm-hmm. We just put iOS on our device. I wonder if one day there will be both OS 10 and iOS on a tablet.
I don't think so.
No?
I think that just as we talked about the ARM performance on this projecting forward, and you can see great things for ARM once the OS supports better utilizes it, and once the apps better utilize it. For example, like iMovie was really good on ARM right now. More iMovie style apps on ARM. Then I don't think we're going to see Mac OS. Mac OS I think will stay with this fixed laptop form factor.
OS 10.
OS 10, sorry. Yeah. Will stay fixed on this non-touch form factor. But I think you're going to see iOS become increasingly robust. I don't think it's there now.
I don't know. They've got to make touchscreen laptops eventually. They got to give into that.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Why?
Come on, because he touches my laptop every time he uses it because he's so used to it. And my kids do too. It's like that's clearly the future.
Or clearly it's what people have been trained to do.
Right, exactly. That's what they expect.
And I completely agree. And if they don't do it, if they stick to their guns, that reversal will just be positioned as they've been working on it for a really long time to get it right. And it is the fundamental difference between, as we go back to what is the difference between mobile and PC. It's not necessarily form factor. I don't think it's processing power. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's price point. What it really is, the difference between a mobile device and a desktop class device is the OS, the platform, which is the tiled windows and the cursor-based system versus a purely touch-based, it's multitask, but full screen experience, we'll call it, as opposed to the tiled screen experience. And I think Mac OS, for the tiled screen, the cursor stuff, I don't think you're going to get touch. Windows has tried to mash both into one, and Windows 8 did it really poorly. I think Windows 10 does it better. And-
Windows changed. I think Windows 8 fundamentally changed the way Microsoft produces operating systems. ... For the better.
Yeah. Which isn't to say they got it right, but it just changed how they think about touch targets and
Right.
what. And their solution really is the stylus. Like, how do you get touch on a laptop? Well, and maximize, like, let you manipulate small cursor points. You use the pinpoint accuracy of a stylus. Like, I scroll with my finger on, but I don't tap buttons and move and minimize windows and manipulate windows with my finger because the touch targets
that's
are
the
so
only thing
poor.
I use with it. I keep trying to use the stylus, and I've either left it on the wrong table because I keep knocking it off the side of the Surface Pro 4. But I don't have that. I don't do that much with touchscreens. I mean, I did have recently. I got a gaming laptop in that I'll mention later on. But it doesn't have a touchscreen. And the first thing is I touched it. I'm like, oh, cool. It doesn't have a touchscreen. And I went back to the mouse.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Like the things I do with touchscreen are so meaningless and arbitrary. It doesn't really offer that much on a laptop for me. I keep thinking like, this is the time I'm going to start doing really cool stuff.
I think it's not about being cool. It's about the convenience.
Well,
it's about
but
the
that's just it.
natural.
Like, convenience is cool, but it's there's no, there's nothing convenient about grabbing a stylus because if I'm at a laptop, I already have the keypad. If I could draw, because I watch people who can actually draw or really serious Photoshop geeks manipulate with a stylus, and it's one of those things where like, I wish I could do that because it's incredibly efficient for them. And
Yeah.
they're doing things that they can't really do
The convenience-
with a mouse or a touchpad.
and efficiency. I think you're the type of person who, if you could do everything with your hands, never having to leave the keyboard,
Right.
you would do that, like shortcuts all the way. And I totally appreciate that. But even I like doing that, but I still find myself, I would rather touch and click a OK button to close the dialog window with my finger than use the trackpad or use a mouse.
Apparently, I need to try to run Adobe Premiere with a stylus on
Yeah.
the Pro 4.
No, not recommended.
Be an exciting experience.
People edit Premiere with using just the keyboard. Like,
Yeah.
there are people editors who don't touch a mouse.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I've worked with a bunch of them. It's amazing to watch
Yeah.
somebody.
It's efficient. I mean, it really is like the way our brains are wired, the signals between your fingers and your head, the minimal movement, like so much you can do.
Right.
And the keyboard's a crazy invention, and also pretty arbitrary. The layout of those keys, it just ended up working out.
No, they weren't arbitrary.
Pretty.
They had a much more efficient layout, and then they switched it to slow typists down to keep
Right.
the actual bars, the type bars, from jamming.
On typewriters.
Yeah, so I'm
And
sorry,
then-
not arbitrary, but a dated paradigm
Right.
that was, like you said, a function of a mechanical problem
Right.
that doesn't exist today.
Like, I wonder how much it irritated, IBM when they were working on the Selectric, that they can make the actual keyboard layout and the angle so much more efficient, but they couldn't actually solve the real problem, which was, QWERTY versus Dvorak or something.
Have you tried living with Dvorak or another keyboard layout?
I type 80 words a minute. I just don't. I don't need to type that. I can't think that much faster. So there's no point in me trying
It's
to.
really
learn
curious.
that.
I wonder, just like you hear stories about families raising their kids on Elvish or Klingon for the first 3 years of their life.
Interestingly, I've never heard that before.
Really?
Yeah.
There have been experiments where parents tried to raise their kids on con languages, constructed languages, as either their second language, so to be bilingual in English and this language, or even as their primary language in a few cases, just for a little bit as the child's mind is developing. Crazy idea.
Selfish
Right.
parents.
I think I'm curious to see whether if someone trained their kid to type in a non-QWERTY format,
Right.
in a format that allows for faster typing and faster input from brain, download from brain to screen, if that would change how that child thinks.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna say that the one I've really wanted to learn is one-handed typing, left-handed or right-handed, which is yeah,
that a thing?
exactly. There actually are methods for it, in part because of people who have lost a hand
Yeah.
and the ability to use their fingers on one hand. But I find myself in situations where I'm trying to type something while I'm manipulating something. When I'm building something, or just being able to mouse over here and be able to keep typing at a more reasonable speed. That's actually, those are pretty cool ideas to me, where there's actually a developed, just like a typing system, where they've developed a method to allow you to cover the entire keyboard efficiently with one hand.
You think it's more challenging for someone today to change how they type on a keyboard than it is to learn a second language?
Oh, boy. It depends on how they learn how to type and how much they type, I think.
Yeah.
Because some people, because I know I've worked with a bunch of people who are kind of, they're hunt and peck typists on a keyboard, but if you give them, Snapchat, their thumbs are typing at an absolutely alarming rate.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Brains are weird.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also, a lot of it's about muscle memory and repetition. And if you
Yeah.
don't, it's crazy. Like, I was talking to some parents, like, they don't teach cursive anymore. Are they teaching typing? No. Well, then what was the point of eliminating cursive if you're not going to teach what they're actually going to be using?
Right.
So,
Well, voice. What you want to do is teach the kids to speak perfectly to the voice recognition systems so they can dictate entire paragraphs,
So their grade in the class is based on whether or not Siri understands them?
or whether they can construct a full paragraph with the fewest errors. This is how we're going to get to that future in Her. Do you remember the movie Her with Spike Jonze, where
Yeah.
everyone, I don't think they had keyboards, they just recited everything perfectly.
Yeah. He worked for a greeting card company.
And he just recited letters.
Yeah.
right.
And kids can't do that. I can't do that.
Well, it also requires you in some cases, to compose a complete paragraph or essay. There are people who can do that, but
I think it's a very useful skill.
sure.
I mean, again, if you raise someone to only voice input on the computer,
Right.
would it change how their brain developed and how they constructed ideas and formulated ideas,
Yes.
right? Brains again.
My
brains
writing,
are weird.
Well, my writing changed a lot between when I would actually longhand everything out on a legal pad
Yeah.
and then when I started using a computer full time.
I can't wait to see 20 years from now what social experiments you've subjected your children to.
I gotta have 5 children so I can subject each to a different type input method. Right? There'll be the experiment A, which is just languages, con languages.
Yeah.
Which con language is the Dothraki, Elvish, or Klingon? Which one develops your brain best? With maybe a placebo, a control case.
Are you going to are you going to generate a random number as the title for each child, or will you letter them as inspired by Google's alphabet?
Number 4, recite Shakespeare in its original Klingon. And then the secondary test is all input methods: typing, Dvorak typing, voice, and and single-handed typing.
Okay.
Yeah, and then longhand. That's the
There's
control
longhand,
case.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Let's go back up there. I think we were talking about the iPad Pro a while ago. Went off on that tangent. An interesting Twitter account to follow and to go back is Steven Sinofsky, who, if the name isn't familiar, he was the lead on Windows going into Windows 8, and he left Microsoft after Windows 8. And he has been blogging and tweeting a lot, very frank tweets about what he thinks about the future of user experience and input methods. And I think he's of the camp where he believes you can't say that tiled windows and cursor-based interfaces are the future. He thought you'd never do video on mobile. He thought that you'd never do, touch wasn't it. So I think he believes, if I'm interpreting his tweets right, that software will find a way, and the convenience of touch only, full screen only experiences or not tiled window experiences will eventually win out. And it's already the case where I think if you look at sales of devices, cursor-based traditional PCs are being on the wane.
MacBooks are up 3%, whereas iPads are down for the year.
But
saying,
iOS, touch devices.
Yep,
Again,
yep.
Mobile. What is mobile versus desktop? Anyway, did either of you watch the Steve Jobs movie?
Not yet.
Nope.
No, that's more of a, on-demand kind of thing for me.
I can wait for it to show up on like Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I don't need to
Netflix.
see that in the theater.
It's not. You can't. I think it's been removed from most
Is it
theaters.
gone? Lost my chance?
It performed so poorly.
I like Danny Boyle. I mean, I'm excited to see it. It's going to do well on video.
I like everyone involved in that movie. Danny Boyle, Aaron Sorkin, the writer,
Yeah.
Michael Fassbender, Kate Winslet, everyone involved. I like, except I really have no interest in watching that movie.
Who's Wozniak?
Oh, it's Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's not a bad choice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really. It's one of those movies where it's like, too soon? Did it really need to be made? What's the point?
There-
Well, not too
there's
soon because
so
there were
much.
so many other.
That's
there
the
like,
thing.
There
There's
was
so much Steve Jobs in the air right now. I mean, there's
Yeah.
like 2 serious biographies. There's the other one from the guy from that 70s show, the other movie.
Ashton Kutcher?
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like there's just
There's
so
a-
much, and they're just inundated.
There's a great clip on YouTube from that Ashton Kutcher Steve Jobs movie where it's him. The scene is him returning to Apple, and he's walking through Apple's campuses, and he meets a young Johnny Ive, and it's his first time meeting Johnny Ive, and they're an immediate bond.
You seen that movie?
No, it's just on the scene.
Okay.
Just this scene on YouTube. And Ashton Kutcher is doing like an SNL impression of Steve Jobs the entire time. The way he's like grimacing, he's like trying so hard.
Right.
He can't even act because he's just trying to maintain the look.
Right.
It is hilarious,
Oh,
that
well.
scene. It's like, it really looks like a sketch comedy scene that just wasn't intended to even be funny.
Jobs, the musical.
That's right.
What's BlackBerry Preve?
The BlackBerry Priv. Wow.
That's not good. That's not good for BlackBerry that you said that. But
Patrick-
that's actually a really fair reaction.
Why don't you educate us and Jeremy on what the BlackBerry Priv
Remember
is?
BlackBerry?
I do.
Yeah, I remember how everybody used to have a BlackBerry,
Mm-hmm.
and then the only people that had BlackBerries were people who were working for like gigantic corporations or the
Yeah.
federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the BlackBerries decided that they don't want to die yet, and they're going to build a new phone with better security for those markets. And it's out, and
Yep.
it's a little less than completely baked. That's the general reaction to
Well,
it.
the big deal is that it's an Android phone.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't have a tactile keyboard?
It does have a tactile
does?
keyboard.
Okay.
Yes, it's a full Android phone. And I
Hmm.
think the keyboard, either you don't have to use it. I want to say it disconnects or it's a attachment. But the way it's made to be a BlackBerry is its security features and their software that they've built in.
Right.
So it's compatible with all the previous the BlackBerry OS. It doesn't even run Marshmallow. It runs Android Lollipop because I'm sure they've been working on it for a while.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say that the build quality and the software experience just, the performance is okay, but there's nothing remarkable about it other
Right.
than that compatibility with BlackBerry, the BlackBerry ecosystem. God,
Yeah.
what? It's so sad. I feel so bad for this Canadian company. What's the
Yeah.
BlackBerry Preve?
Well, it's funny because like I think it's Crackberry that put up the. That's a tough thing to be running a website about BlackBerry products, but I mean the other one is I guess they have the Vienna, which is the next phone that follows up that.
Another BlackBerry?
Yeah, I think it's codenamed Vienna.
So, a bigger deal for the Android world and the Google ecosystem world, not BlackBerry making an Android phone, but a new Android Wear watch that is a true luxury watch that actually may look appealing to people who are watch aficionados.
Right.
This is Tag Heuer's $1,500 smartwatch running Android Wear.
It's their own hardware design? It's a new hardware design?
It's a new hardware design, and if you look at it, it looks a lot like if you didn't know it was a digital watch with a screen on its face. It looks like a nice luxury watch.
It's a full circle.
Full circle. Yes, the full circle
That's
is important. Yes, $1,500. Titanium case. I think the screen is 46 millimeters.
Right.
And pretty high resolution. Waterproof. Has your processor inside, so it really is a full high-end Android Wear watch. $1,500. I repeat,
Jeez.
very expensive. But if you're in the market for, I think Apple has proven that when they release the Apple Watch, it is not a commodity item; it is a luxury item.
Yeah, the $1,500 one's the mid-range one.
That's right. And so for Android Wear to launch and people complaining about the pricing, and now you have the high-end one. Maybe this is a way to get. I love Android Wear. I really miss it, and I think the software integration was really good with that.
And then also, I think $1,500 is relatively cheap for a Tag Heuer watch.
Yeah.
Generally, being a vintage pocket watch and or Timex kind of guy myself, I understand. Obviously, I have a whole bunch of headphones that are probably ridiculously priced, but I've never understood, the whole sort of like $6,000 to multi-million-dollar watch collecting thing. But
You're
yeah,
absolutely right. I'm seeing $5,000 Tag Heroes at Bloomingdale's right here. Yep.
So that's not a huge. I mean, and if it's built like every other tag, it's like having a little awesome little tank on your wrist. And I mean, there's such a huge market for people who wouldn't be caught dead with an Apple Watch on their arm, but who would happily do their I'm a pseudo 19th century diver, special forces, pilot badass with my wrist chronographic device.
Well, another interesting thing, because they make a ton of watches,
Right.
and this is their first foray, and it is an experiment, and it's a brand strength. A lot of people
Right.
love the Tag Heuers.
They're beautiful.
They are. There's a warranty with this watch, and a 2-year warranty with their Android Wear device. In that time, if you decide you don't like Android Wear, you can actually go in store and trade up your Android Wear Tag Heuer for a mechanical Tag Heuer.
That's a company that understands brand loyalty.
Yes, but you do pay more. I mean, you're paying another $1,500
Sure.
bucks, I think. So you're getting a $3,000 or equivalent
Right.
watch because of how much it actually costs them to make those watches. I think it's very fair for them.
Right.
And again, it is brand loyalty. I think it's a really smart thing for them to do.
Given the aftermarket resale value of your typical smartwatch after 6 months.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what exactly that replacement mechanical watch and where in the lineup
Right.
that is. Maybe it'll be retail less for $3,000. But anyone trying out, like they're betting for people to new customers to buy and adopt this Android Wear watch, and then hopefully in 2 years they won't dislike it enough to, or maybe they will and just pay another $1,500, and at that point they got a $3,000 watch sale.
Which, I mean, again, like compared to the value of a Samsung Gear first edition, it's going to be worth a lot more. The tag's going to be worth a lot more in 18 months, even if you don't trade it in, than your vintage first generation smartwatch, your Pebble.
Patrick, I noticed you're not wearing a smartwatch.
I have these very ridiculously sized wrists, and it's enormously difficult for me to wear a watch for extended periods of time without having wrist pains. I could not actually wear that. I toughed through the first week with the Apple Watch, but it wasn't until the new band came out, when they did the extra large sport band, that I could afford to buy a band that would actually fit my wrists. But I stopped when I started writing for a living at magazines. I stopped wearing a watch because about 6 months in, I realized whichever wrist I wore the watch on started to hurt after a couple weeks. And when I stopped wearing a watch, my wrist stopped hurting. So I'm a little idiosyncratic that way.
Jeremy, how about you with your Apple Watch? How is it essential in your life now?
Well, I don't know. I didn't have the Pebble beforehand, so I was going straight from nothing to notifications on my wrist. That feature alone made it, I don't want to say indispensable, but I do miss it when it's not on my wrist. Just getting text messages and email notifications, alerts right here, and giving it to my better half, who at least half the time, never heard the phone ring or get the text message.
Has it actually changed that?
Yes.
Really?
And that's great.
Wow.
Okay.
So now I can
Priceless.
get her attention. Yes, that's good.
Awesome.
I never use apps though.
Never use the apps.
I never go to the app screen ever. I'm never down there. It's just notifications. That's good enough.
Interesting.
Do you use it for driving?
You mean directions?
Yeah, directions.
Sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I'm usually using Google Maps, and that does not sync over. But if I happen to use Apple Maps, yes.
Well, if Google Maps syncs over, there's even more functionality now. This week, Google Maps announced offline directions.
Yeah.
Big
Why
deal.
did they not have that before? I thought
They
that
had
was
a version of it before where you can download like the local version of just that
Right.
map just to zoom in, but you couldn't get turn-by-turn directions.
Oh, interesting.
And so the way this works is you can download by region, by city or county,
Right.
or by area. You'll download it locally, including the logic needed to
Right.
process addresses and directions, and it'll even run with your data off, but with GPS. So a lot of people, if you want to save data and turn on airplane mode,
How
you
does
can
it work
actually
without GPS? Because it wouldn't know where you are.
no with GPS.
Oh.
So you can have GPS with like the airplane mode with no data connection, turn off data,
Oh, I see.
and just use the GPS with your downloaded map.
Yeah.
The best case use for this is just low reception area. I hate
Yeah. Driving through the mountains.
exactly.
Driving up through Marin County, which is 20 minutes north of San Francisco, like there's huge
funny.
swaths where it's little country roads and there's no
Yeah.
coverage up there. But yeah, this is I mean for Navigon, and which is now part of Garmin and some other companies, this cannot be good news.
No.
On the upside, if you're doing a lot of traveling, the idea of having to like go into manually like search for Broward County, click download this county, click download this county, because I don't think they do anything like the state level.
Can't you just type in your destination and then download the trip?
That I think
you
can.
but
Okay.
Yeah. Now, what I would love, and this is where I really, it's one of the reasons I use Google Maps as opposed to Apple Maps, even on the iPhone, is I do all my pre-planning and trip planning on desktop. Like I search because I need the big window.
faster.
It's faster. I can reroute with a cursor really easily, and that search history saves. And so when I load up Google Maps on the phone in the car, it's like the first result, and it has that exact same trip. And I would imagine in the future, because you can also push downloads to your Android phone, that we will select the area where you want to download on your desktop and say download to phone, and they'll just download it on the app in the phone. That's what I would hope.
Right.
There will be an iOS version with compatibility for offline maps, and that's coming soon, quote unquote soon. But I think Google's smart enough that they want to have the best mapping app on every platform.
I think something I should probably make clear is having spent a lot of time in the hinterlands when there is no cell coverage, oftentimes just having your route doesn't work in case a road gets cut down, a tree falls, or you end up being like, oh, wow, there's a dinosaur quarry 10 miles that way. And
Yeah.
I want to figure out if you can keep doing a big loop past the dinosaur quarry.
So having the logic downloaded is important.
Yeah, having having all the information for an area.
That's cool.
Especially as you really get into eastern Nevada, southern Utah, New Mexico, where you get into huge areas where you can get lost really well and not have cell reception the entire time.
All right, we're going to jump through some last news bits relatively quickly. Apple Music is now available for Android. It was a delayed launch.
I would ask you about it, but you no longer have an Android phone.
Yeah, and I have no interest in Apple Music really. Although if I was to get Apple Music, I would get it on the Android phone first, so Google gets the 30% cut.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would show them.
yeah, it should take. Yeah, and then also, have you seen this Kickstarter for custom fit earbuds?
Yes.
Revolves, I want to say, is the name of the company. And they've raised $500,000 already on Kickstarter. But it's a system where you get the earbuds and you put them into your ear, and then they form fit and
A Canadian
in.
company came up with this technology and actually had it at CES, or a similar technology, maybe not the same, but they have been doing for years, primarily at mining operations, being able to create custom ear molds to protect people's hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird little system. You basically clamp it on, click a couple things, hold it, and then it expands into your ear. Then the polymer hardens,
Right.
and you pull it
Oh,
back
so this
out.
is not a mold you have to send off to get made.
no, and that's
into
the
it.
big thing. Is as
Right.
opposed to a 1 month plan, you just do it at home
That's interesting.
yourself.
Yeah.
Huh.
I would
And you
assume
get
that
one
they
try.
license the technology.
And it uses Onkyo audio technology. My question is there no fear of like it doing any damage to your ear when the mold's setting?
Getting
when the
stuck.
cast? Yeah.
No, because it's not that.
It's so soft.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the shape on it, I don't think it's doing something where it's injecting things deep into your ear. It looks like it's in a balloon that inflates into your ear.
Got it.
They don't. The pictures don't get that deep.
You get one shot. That's
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
I believe you get the one shot. Yeah.
What do you think, Patrick? Is this you'd have to see what the drivers sound like to even make a call on this?
Yeah, because custom fitted ear molds are always amazing. Although, like Etymotics has been around forever. They do these silicone plugs that go into your ear canal, and they're amazing because they're like 37 decibels of attenuation without being custom fit, right? Because they have like 4 thin layers of silicone that kind of squeeze into your ear canal.
They're like
and
ridged.
yeah, and I would use those actually in the machine shop rather than the standard ear protection because it was another 16D better than the earmuffs we had in the shop. So there's a picture of me somewhere with these earbuds sticking out of my ear and sparks coming off of metal as I'm on this huge grinder.
With no music playing, you just use them for ear
Generally,
protection.
yeah, generally for But it's amazing. There's so much going on in headphones and earbuds right now. Like Shure's come out with their new like in-ear electrostatics. I found out, Norm, that a friend of mine has traveled to like 2 different continents just to have additional opportunities to audition the Orpheus as Sennheiser takes it from place to place. And it is that sort of mystical experience.
$55,000 pair of headphones.
Well, apparently it is extraordinary. I mean, the man's basically built an entire business about riding around headphones. But
Jiro dreams of headphones.
I think literally. I mean, it is their expression of that, but it'll either be like they'll either sound amazing or they'll sound okay or they'll sound like crap. And a lot of stuff I've seen sold for $600 sounds like crap, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we have a video with Patrick about how to listen to your audio and test your own audio equipment. What you should listen for. You should check out the video. It's on our Tested YouTube channel. Play. Time for a very short ad break. This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is also brought to you by SoftLayer, an IBM company. SoftLayer delivers cloud built for privacy. Your business applications and computational workloads are unique, so you deserve cloud resources that meet your specific needs. SoftLayer is one of the only cloud providers that provisions dedicated servers and virtual servers, otherwise known as a public cloud, from a single seamless platform. All on demand, all connected on the same open API, and all connected to a global private network. SoftLayer is an IBM company, and in fact, IBM uses SoftLayer as its cloud infrastructure foundation for all IBM cloud products and services. All of our listeners of This Is Only a Test have the opportunity to get $500 off of cloud infrastructure by visiting softlayer.com/podcast. You can order bare metal servers, virtual servers, storage, networking, and security services from your choice of 24 data centers around the world. So visit softlayer.com/podcast and get started with $500 off servers, storage, network, and security on a cloud built for privacy from SoftLayer. Thanks so much, SoftLayer, for supporting this week's episode of This Is Only a Test, and on with the show. You're not going to get the music. Sorry. Soundboard crashed, and I'm just trying to manually do it.
Do we have time for the VR minute?
We do. And I don't even have the VR Minute intro. It's time for the VR Minute. Virtual reality.
This week.
A couple things in the VR space this week. Big deal, Gear VR available for sale.
This is the one they announced at the last Oculus Connect, right?
Yes, and this is the one they're billing as the consumer release of Gear VR, the one they've been building up to. The previous 2 Gear VRs were Innovator Editions, one for the Galaxy Note 4 and one for the GS6, the Galaxy S6. This one will work with the GS6 or the Galaxy Note 5.
I thought it was 4 phones it worked with.
Well, G6 Edge and the Note Edge as well.
Gotcha.
But the form factors are 2 sizes of phone. And it is a little lighter. They worked out a little bit of hardware, and it's also cheaper too, only $100. I'm actually not going to upgrade because I don't think
there's no new functionality.
There's no new functionality. The D-pads are a little different. It's being a lighter isn't that big of a concern to me. I have the GS6 version and I have a GS6. That's fine. I think that when this is actually released, the channel in 11/20, 20th of this month, the big software update that will come along with it will be the big change, and that will more mark the consumer release than the hardware being available. But if you have a Note 5 or a GS6 or thinking about getting one, you should also consider the Gear VR. $100 I don't think is that unreasonable.
No brainer
for that headset.
New York,
totally. If you have that phone already.
New York Times gave away cardboard. Well, I think since the last podcast, right?
To everyone.
Yeah,
that's
in
crazy.
the Sunday edition. It was, quite a lot of issues, and it all shipped with a Google Cardboard. And there was a New York Times official cardboard experience too, or maybe it was sponsored by somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have not tried that experience, and it's not uncommon for people to do these big marketing campaigns. I remember there was that one magazine ad that actually had like a low-cost cell phone built in to get the data.
A phone?
Like basically, you could take it apart, and there was the processing chip, there was an antenna, and you could wire it up.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
It struck me as you were describing the Gear release that it's sort of like a perfect cardboard experience because there is no motion tracking, but it's like a comfortable cardboard with light isolation, I would say.
Right. It costs costing $100 gives you that premium rotational tracking, which at the initial start of consumer-facing VR is where a lot of that content will be.
And I guess there's a little bit of motion, or not motion, but input.
Yes.
with the tracking screen on the
Yes.
side.
Yes. And also Bluetooth support, and so you
Yeah.
can do all that stuff. YouTube also. Did we talk about this last week? YouTube putting all its content. I think we did. Right. YouTube putting
Maybe.
all of its content in VR to view in a window.
Yeah.
Unreal also announced that the newest update to Unreal Engine will include NVIDIA GameWorks support. NVIDIA GameWorks gives you SLI for VR rendering. Also, their I forget the acronym. Their way of rendering for VR where you can scale the level of detail. So it anticipates that your eyes are really going to be focused on the center of the optics, and so it can render less fidelity on the outer edges,
Yeah.
where places where you won't notice it. And I think that's going to be a huge thing. They're claiming a huge performance increase without a noticeable perceived graphical reduction on that.
I guess to go along with the YouTube stuff, there's Google Jump videos on YouTube now.
Oh, yeah?
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So I don't know if it's shot with the actual rig, but they are branded as Jump. Have you seen the rig? It's
Yeah.
like 16 GoPros
In a
mounted in a circle. And the processing behind it is supposed to be, space age stuff where only Google can do it. You offload, you send the videos up to them, and they send it back to you. But it's supposed to be really cool. But the videos that are online, I don't know. I'm not as impressed as I hoped that I would be. I mean, you can, as someone who doesn't have cardboard, I haven't seen them in good stereoscopic mode yet. But I've watched it in anaglyph and I've watched it in 2D, and you can see where the seams are. It's not like the stitching is as far ahead as I thought it would be of the curve.
But it's all about the depth perception being the big thing.
That's the thing, and I haven't tried it yet. Unfortunately, there's no Oculus support. I can't wait to try it. But I was hoping that the cool, stuff that they've done with having so many cameras and being able to interpret some amount of depth data, that there will be some form of motion tracking in that small amount of space of that ring of cameras.
So one of the big hot topics in virtual reality game development today and in the enthusiast community is the idea of locomotion. How are you going to move around in the VR space? And Patrick, if you're unfamiliar, the idea is if VR, if the sense of presence is really augmented by the ability for you to stand and walk around, then the problem becomes, well, how do you get across a giant Minecraft open world when you're only tracking what's in front of your desk or even a room scale thing? And so the
Hamster
idea
balls.
right, and
Pen
or
circles.
so what's like software design actually works. Can you like switch to third person? Can you scale up and down? And there are two demos I tried this past week that offered some interesting ideas. One is the Everest VR demo, and this was announced alongside the NVIDIA GameWorks announcement, I think. And it's not tied to the movie Everest, but they use some of the same computational model, and it's a series of experiences where you're basically giving you a sense of what the scale of Everest, and you walking on the top of Everest and traversing, crossing those ladders over the chasms and climbing ladders and stuff like that. And the demo I use the HTC Vive.
Right.
Now,
Is it CG?
it's all rendered real time, Unreal Engine rendered.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like a video game,
Yeah.
basically. And you're holding controllers. Now, in one of the demos, what they did was before the demo loaded, it gave you an empty space and it showed you footprints, glowing footprints, and told you to walk to those footprints and put your feet there, and then the game loaded in.
Okay. Assuming
So-
you could walk there, right?
Well, no, it knows because it's the Vive. It knows your room. And so the footprints tell you where to orient yourself
Okay.
in the room.
In the room.
In the corner of the room.
Got it.
So that the level could be loaded around you, and then you would have that, and so that it would accommodate all your movement.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think that's an interesting idea. We talked about this. If you're teleporting between spaces, how do you teleport, and where in that room do you end up teleporting in,
Yeah.
for example? So this gives you the idea. If you teleport to a space, even though in the virtual environment it's a big landscape, it's going to prompt you to get to the start position first,
Yep.
and then load the level in, and then have the experience around you. That's neat. Obviously, people have tried the kind of roller coaster conveyor belt movement, where you don't control your movement, but it transports you in real time from one place to the other. And the concern with that type of locomotion solution is that nausea, because you're not in control of your body, right? And the way that the Everest demo solved that was, for when it started moving your body, it actually scaled, blacked out the world around you, and just had the screen. And so it looked like it was just you're watching like a 16:9
Really?
video
Huh.
of you flying to that location, and once you landed to where your next experience was supposed to be,
Yeah.
then it opened up the frame.
So it gave you a computer monitor for the movement.
Exactly.
That's
which
interesting.
then I think focuses your attention and makes you less aware of you not actually being in control of your physical movement.
Yeah.
And so it's less about, it took away presence in order to
keep you from
in order
throwing
to
up.
keep you for comfort's purposes.
Right.
And then brought it back in a seamless way by expanding the frame all around you when it wanted you to be more immersed.
That's cool. It's like falling back on the old platform.
Yeah, I like that idea. While the demo itself was, it was okay. It wasn't spectacular. I think those ideas were neat. The other demo I tried was Adrift, and this is from Day of the Dev, devs. And this is a game that's basically the simplest. The elevator pitch for it is it's Gravity, but the VR game, the Sandra Bullock movie, the Alfonso Cuarón movie.
Yikes.
You're an astronaut. You're outside the space station. And there's a disaster that's happened, and you are trying to survive, finding air tanks to replenish your air, and also exploring the space station and finding out what happened. So it's a first-person experience, like Gone Home. You're
a mini
solving
The
a
Martian.
story. Yeah, but in zero G.
Right.
And it's supposed to be like a 3-4 hour game. It's now an Oculus launch title, so it'll come out next year. But what I really loved about this game, even though you played it with a gamepad, the locomotion felt really natural because it didn't feel like you were walking around an open environment. It felt like the spacesuit was a spaceship.
So you have some sort of dome that you're looking
Your
through?
dome, yes.
So that gave you a point of reference.
Exactly. And so you have complete freedom of head movement and rotational movement inside your spacesuit
Inside the
helmet.
dome, yeah.
And that's where your HUD is. But you're using thrusters just like real astronauts do, air propulsion,
Yeah.
to maneuver around, and your brain is okay with that.
I also suspect, and I haven't tried that yet, but I suspect that because the propulsion was physics-based, that also helps
Yes.
you become less nauseous.
That's right. Because your brain thinks, okay, that's
natural. That's how the world
natural.
works.
And people do get nauseous all the time in physics-based, environments,
Yeah.
right? If you're spinning around too, but your brain it's reconciling with your brain's understanding of the laws of physics.
Exactly.
And the real world. Now, in the future version of Adrift, where they're incorporating motion controls, it'll feel like your spacesuit is a spaceship with your hands popping out of it, just like an astronaut, and you're hitting these buttons to activate the propulsion, but then you're also manipulating the environments with your hands. So imagine Elite Dangerous, except you could actually interact with the world if you got close enough to it by having motion control, your hands stick out of your ship. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. And you wouldn't expect, your brain doesn't expect to feel wind if you're in a spacesuit
Exactly.
either, or any
Yeah.
kind of sense of the environment.
Right. The idea of spacesuit being as a spaceship, I think, solves one of those problems.
Bring it on.
All right, so that's it for the VR Minute. We're back to news. Some last minute things. I forgot. Time Warner. Have you seen this Time Warner Roku service idea? Time Warner is experimenting in some areas, swapping out your cable box with a Roku, and then getting running Time Warner through an app.
Is that an exclusive app to this
I think so.
service?
I think
you
so.
can't, and not
Yeah.
Roku users. Okay.
Yeah. And so it really is them banking on the UI expertise
Wow.
of third-party hardware makers.
God, I read the Roku is dirt cheap Black Friday too. It's like $25 or something.
Yep. Yep. T-Mobile also has an interesting new policy for its subscribers. If you have a data plan with T-Mobile that allows for at least 3 gigs of data usage on your phone or tablet, then it up to 24 different web services, including HBO, Vimeo, and other places, Netflix.
Right.
It won't actually count toward that 3 gigs.
Well, it's good we solved that whole net neutrality.
Exactly. Isn't is this the way it's going to go?
I don't know.
Is it corporations just do what they want?
Yeah.
Yeah, corporate. Well, it's funny because one of the things we were talking about on Tech Thing this week was we had somebody with a panicked email like, my family keeps blowing through the Comcast data cap. And it's like, well, if you're outside of like 18 cities, it doesn't really matter because they don't really enforce it, right? That 300 gigabyte cap. If you're inside the new cities where their new data plans are going, they set it up, and I got links in the show notes on Tech Thing this week, but it's like they first they'll be like, hey, you went over your cap. Hey, we'll sell you more data. It's $10 for another 50 gigabytes. Hey, we've got this unlimited plan for $30 a month. You know what I mean? And it's like now at this point, thanks to, the cell phone industry, it's funny watching cable following the mobile industry down a particular path, where it's like, we're going to sell you unlimited. Well, it's unlimited until we decide it's unlimited because you're actually using the bandwidth you think you paid. But it's that's the snarkier comments on it, where it's essentially it's a pure money grab. The other way of saying it is like, well, they're actually enforcing it and giving you a relatively reasonable option, except that, oh wait, $30 is half of what your cable bill your cable internet bill probably is at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's also because having been pounced on by a third-party reseller of Comcast services at a Best Buy a couple weeks ago, and just deciding that was a wonderful opportunity to learn everything I could about the internet. It's funny how much you can learn about how little Comcast actually values a lot of its services, because they just are so desperate to get you signed on for the first year.
Yeah.
It's the second year where they beat you into a pulp and drain your wallet.
I was telling Jeremy last week, if you have an interaction with Comcast and it goes pleasantly, you feel like you got ripped off. If they're happy with it, then you're paying for it somehow.
Yeah, well, they are also desperate to bundle phone and cable television,
Security,
and
home security now. Yeah, it's a lot. Let's go to what we've been testing. What have you guys been using this week? Sorry for no audio cue. My soundboard crashed and won't even restart. I'll attempt to replay the keys again. Nope.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I don't know. Apple TV. Do you do Apple TV?
I do Apple TV. How about that new remote? It's just like a usable product, but different.
It's funny. As soon as
I'm getting angrier about the remote.
Will Smith mentioned on the last show that it's too symmetrical, that like you'll use the wrong side
Completely.
And I never did that until he said that, and now I'm doing it all the time.
I was doing it constantly from day one. There's a subtle textural difference between the touchpad and the shiny Ed, and that's the shiny Ed is a little bit smoother. So I'll pick it up and I'll either click or I'll realize my thumb is on the smooth part and I'll flip it around. The home button is the single best change to any Apple product in a decade. Like that's how much I did not like going back 22 times to get out of nested Netflix
menu
menus.
is back, but menu is not labeled back. It's still labeled menu.
Right.
But it's technically the back button.
But the one that basically takes you from wherever you are to the main screen is a priceless addition. And the volume controls are awesome.
Being able to double tap that and switch between. That's how you get back to your last app. We all know the keyboard sucks, right? The on-screen keyboard.
Yep.
Yeah.
We all agree, and we all agree it's ridiculous that they don't do a voice search.
Right.
Or voice dictation for that keyboard.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and the fact that they have a remote app in the App Store that doesn't work with the new Apple TV, a little ridiculous.
A little ridiculous. The one thing I have been liking with the Apple TV is how well all of the services are integrated. Mm-hmm. And they did give out the right hooks.
The kids are loving the games, too.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing, is that my hope was that there would be real universal apps in there that if you already own them on the iPad, that there's a good chance that they'll work.
It's been like a mix.
It is a mix, and as it should be. I mean, that's what you expect from phone, iPad compatibility. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Right. But I already owned 40 apps as soon as I had the Apple TV because I had them on the iPad. So that was handy. I thought that was kind of neat.
I think it's going to be curious to watch with some of the larger games how the data, the sort of capped, 200
megabytes.
Are you finding response time on the games is good between the controller?
There's so little going on. My issue with the controller is it's a profoundly imprecise touchpad. Where I'm, if I'm trying to rewind something in a movie and getting it like it'll go back, it won't go back, it'll recognize my thumb, it won't recognize my thumb.
Yep.
You should try the different sensitivity levels.
I will experiment with
There's
that.
3. I don't know. I put it on high sensitivity just because I like to move around a lot.
If I want to find precise time, it's been very difficult.
Yeah.
To get to a exact second in a playback stream.
I also use the Steam Link a bit more because I hooked it up to Ethernet and I wanted to see what the difference is like. And I got to say, Ethernet on Steam Link is like I'm having a monitor connected to the computer.
Oh, I have no doubt. Steam Link performance-wise, even with the 3 settings of balance and image quality, and even if you use image quality, it's great. rarely notice compression. It is seamless in terms of the encoding and display. What sucks about Steam Link is everything else. Is Steam. Compatibility. I've had controllers not work.
Yeah.
I've
had black screens. I've seen my desktop oddly
several
appear.
times.
It's a little strange.
It's every other time I load up a game on Steam Link in testing because I want to run as many games as possible.
Yeah.
Every other time I've had to go back to my desk, either close a window, click a box, do something, Alt Tab, and that is just not pleasant.
What reassures me though is that the hardware works, and so that's software. Valve's on top of it. They're releasing frequent updates. You're running the beta of Steam, I assume. So, and I'm quite happy with the whole experience, and I've gotten used to the gamepad too, the Steam controller.
My problem with that is they release something. If it's released, it should be done. They should have I mean, when it's done is like their mantra.
Next thing they'll tell me if I buy a game, it should actually function.
That's so
on
20th
day
century,
one.
guys. Come on.
I don't even.
We're in the.
Don't sell something for its potential.
We've lived in the age of day zero patches for a decade
but
or two now.
But it's not day zero. This is the beginning of their Steam venture. This is like they're promising daily updates and like it's gonna work. It's gonna be awesome eventually.
Yeah.
But
you can't even buy a pinball machine that's finished these days. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Absolutely.
It's disappointing. And on that note, I think that's it for this week's podcast. Anything you guys want to plug, Jeremy?
Well, there's always my Twitter account at Jareware.
At Jareware. And check out if you should follow that or the other websites to check for more Game Frame information.
Yeah, Game Frame's coming.
So is there a website?
No, I mean there's my website, LEDSEC, LEDSEQ. If you add one to your cart, you'll join the notification list. But just follow me on Twitter. You'll see the stuff there.
All right. And Patrick?
TechThing.com. Going to be doing. We got a $799 gaming laptop from Dell, and we're going to review next week. And I've been playing around with the Maximus 8 Impact, which is a mini ITX board for Skylake. I'm going to be building a system around.
From ASUS?
From ASUS.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And we'll have more videos with Patrick on the site. It's awesome. We're going to talk geek out about hardware.
Patrick has a tested title now.
Yes.
What is he? He's
senior technology correspondent.
That's impressive. What am I? Do I have a title?
Senior correspondent.
We'll come up with something.
Junior podcast associate.
No.
All right.
Come up with something.
Senior podcast editor.
No.
It's not it either.
I was impressed because I watched your audio video and you have a title. I thought that was cool. Well done.
Cool. We have a lot more content on
I feel like
Tested.
I've jumped the line all of a sudden.
Also. So please check that out. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you guys next week. This week's outro does not exist unless I can get this played. So let's see. Hi there. I didn't see you.
Tested.
So
that means if Picard goes and takes a steamer, he has to smell it in his office.
Gift that keeps on giving. Will Smith. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.